This is the second attempt at this video. The first attempt, I'm not really liking very much, so I decided I was going to do the video again. So if you like to see my finger in the camera half the time and having really weird wide shots, then you can watch that video and get a good laugh out of it. So we closed on our property on Friday, which was 2 days ago. So what we're doing now is we're on the road that we will be living on, which is a dirt road. About a quarter of a mile in front of us is a rural highway. So we do live on a dirt road, but we don't have to be very long on a dirt road. Here is the northwest corner, or northeast corner, sorry, of our property. This is the wooded part. I don't know if you can see in the video, but there's survey flags on the trees that the surveyor did, in addition to the corner stake that he has here. Here is the road going to the west. If you see my truck out in the distance, our property goes for about another 100 feet past my truck. So on this side of the property, which is the north side, will be about 630 feet plus or minus. What I'm doing now is I want to get a visual representation of what the property looks like before we do any improvements or we do any building of any kind. So one of the first things we want to do is, if you see all the brush in front of the trees, we want to clean all that stuff up. Eventually we want to clean the brush out inside the tree area, so then we can eventually put a fence so Sherlock or any other animals that we might get can actually go into the wooded area without having a bunch of brush to deal with. So starting about now, everything that we just saw was all trees for the entire depth. So if you can see now, there's trees right near the road, but there's the farmland behind. We have 9 acres in total. About 7 of it is farmland and 2 acres is wooded area. So this has been farmland for as far as I could go back on the satellite, which the earliest satellite image I could find was in 1984. So the trees we have a mixture of pine trees, hardwood trees, we have cedar, we have magnolias. One of the things we want to do is to get a tree person out here so he can help identify what trees we have, what trees are bad. You know, we got to clean up trees because we have different types of vines and stuff growing on some of the trees, so we want to clean those out. So now we're coming to the edge of the tree area. So you can see Andre and Sherlock right there. We have to have Sherlock on a leash because if I'm out at the street here, he would be all over the place and anywhere but the 9 acres. So there's a tower in the background. That tower has been there since the mid-90s. It has gone through several different hurricanes. So the tower, if they could survive hurricanes like Florence and Matthew and such, it should be around for a while longer. So now we're coming up onto the west part of the property. So right here, you can't really see it because it's overgrown, but there's a swale right here. And this swale helps keep the water away so it doesn't pond on the farmland. This is the northwest part of the road. So on the left there, you can see a cable box. So even though we're out in the middle of nowhere, there's high-speed fiber optic cable that we can get. Then beyond the cable box, you see a house. That is our closest neighbor, and it's about 700 feet away. Here is the same part of the property, or same part of the road going east. You can see where my truck is, so you can see how far the actual property is. I can't even see the stake from here, it's so far away. Alright, what I'm doing now is I'm going on the west side of the property so we can be able to look at everything. There's the tree area in front where Andrea is. Sherlock is coming now. So we're going to keep walking. All the trees that you can see there is on our property. So what we want to do is, like I said, we want to clean that out. I don't know if you can see in the video, but we have stakes in the ground for a septic tank permit. In South Carolina, DHEC they come out and do the septic tank permit and the tests and everything. You can get an engineer to do it, but the engineer is going to be really expensive, and they're going to over-engineer it, which will make the system a lot more expensive. So all we have to do is wait. The average wait time now is about 6 to 8 weeks. We're in week 4, so we should hopefully be hearing from them in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So if you hear all the crunching, it's all of the stuff that was farmed last year that is now dead, and weeds and stuff are taking over slowly but surely. Alright, so we're about 2/3 of the way down the side. The west side, which is the side I'm walking on now, is about 630 feet. The south side and the east side are also about 630 feet. So this property is not exactly a square, but for practical purposes it pretty much is just a square. So we don't have long weird dimensions that we have to deal with for property lines. So where we're coming up now is we're coming up to the southwest corner. This is also the highest part of the property. So the property looks like it's dead flat, but it's not. There's a gentle slope going from the southwest corner, which is where I am right now, to the northeast side. So what we want to do is put a pond in that location. Alright, where we are now is we're at the southwest stake. So if you see the clearing in the distance over there, you see the trees on the right side is not on our property, but it's pretty much at the property line. So what I want to do now is I want to pan real slowly, and I'll show you the tower. There's the tower. You can see the anchor points and then all the trees are on that tower property. Then you see a single wide trailer, and beyond the single wide trailer, a few hundred feet, you see a tree line. That's where a swamp is. The good thing is we're about 30 feet higher in elevation than that swamp. So in most parts of the country that doesn't mean anything, but Horry County is a big watershed area. So a few feet of elevation makes a great deal of difference. There's our neighbor's house right there. And then now I'm panning to the north, and that is the road side. You can see my truck right there. Then you also see a cell tower in the background. So even though we're in the middle of nowhere, we not only have fiber optic cable, but we have really good 5G coverage. So some things are really, really good even though we're out in the middle of nowhere. All right, so what we're doing now is we're going to go down the south side of the property. So this property was farmed last year. So when we first started coming in February, there was pretty much just a little bit of low winter ground cover. So now the weeds are starting to take up, and if we would leave this alone, in about 3 to 5 years, we would have pine trees covering pretty much the entire field, and they would be about 10 to 12 feet tall, and they would be dense. They would be like 3 or 4 inches apart. And so one good thing is you don't want to get the brush overgrown. So one of the things we're going to do in the fairly near future, after we get settled in, is we're going to have to buy a big zero-turn lawnmower so we can mow this thing. But as you see right here, the ground's pretty good right in this spot. There's pretty much no weeds, it's just ground cover. What I would eventually like to do is get a ground cover and seed it in an area and let it slowly take over, which can hopefully choke the weeds out. That might seem like a fool's errand, but I'm going to try anyway. So the trees over there on the north, that's going to be our first project, is to start cleaning all that stuff up. So we can see, because the trees on the north side are not very deep, only maybe about 2 or 3 rows deep of trees in some parts. So we should be able to clear the brush out fairly easy. The trees on the east side, which is what we're coming up to now, is a little different. These trees, we probably have about 80 to 120 feet or so of woods going down the entire east side of the property. So as you can see, because we're coming up on the tree area now. Oh, let me stop for a second because here comes Sherlock. Okay, so you can see we can get in there and clean a lot of that brush out. It doesn't look like it's too awful bad. So where we are now is that this is a clearing that we were in, that the adjacent owner of this farm field here that I'm getting ready to pan, they farmed this particular our property. So the person that owned our property, a lot of his farmland was several miles away, so it was not advantageous for him to come down just to farm a few acres. So what he did is he leased his farmland out to somebody else. So the adjacent person farmed the property. Gonna pan left a little bit. Sherlock, of course, is not on our property. Sorry about that. I had to tell Sherlock to get back onto our property. What you're looking at now is that there's an old house dead ahead. That house was built in the 30s. It looks like it's been abandoned for some time. Well, when we were looking for property, I saw that listing. It was like 5.2 acres with that house. And so I was looking at the listing. When I saw that the house was in the condition that it was, I wasn't really interested in that property because that house would take a lot to get fixed up. So I just happened to zoom out while I was looking in the area and saw the listings for this. This was 9 acres, but they were listing it as 2 separate tracts. So if you wanted to buy 4.5 acres or the other 4.5 acres. So we just put an offer in on all 9 acres. So here's the clearing from our property back towards the west part. So you can see the anchor for the tower in the distance. And then our survey flag is probably about 30 feet to the right. Sherlock, of course, is running around, so he's where he's not supposed to be. So eventually what we want to do, we want to close this clearing up. So we're going to let nature take over, and hopefully pine trees and stuff will grow in this area. All right, now we're on the east side of the property. This is the lower part of the property, if you want to call it that. So when you're looking, like I said, it looks like the land is flat, but it's not. It has a gentle curved slope to it. And what we're doing now, so we're walking down the east side of the property, and after it rains, the water pools up in a couple of locations. One in the center on the right side, and one in the northeast corner. So what we're doing is we're coming up on the first low area now, and it hadn't rained in a while, so of course it's dry. But let me stop and pan down, and you can see where this area gets a little moister than everywhere else. So like I said, it's dry right now, but last week when we came out, there was some water in there. So what we want to do is we're coming up on the area where we want to build our pond. So it just so happens that the spot we wanted to build our pond just happened to be the lower part of the property. So it seems to all work out. So now we're coming onto the area where the pond is going to be. The pond is going to be about 1/3 of an acre. And DHEC recommendations for ponds in South Carolina is that to have a 1 acre pond, you would need 10 to 12 acres of farmland to shed into it. We have about 7 acres of farmland, and knowing that all of the farmland will not shed into the pond, making it 1/3 of an acre, if we can get 3 to 4 of the acres to shed into it, we should be able to sustain the pond. All right, I'm going to stop now. Here is the low area. So whenever there's any type of rain, if any place gets water, it will be this area. Now the good thing is we have sandy and loamy soil, which loamy soil is a mixture of sand and clay. And so the soil is very good for absorption, which means unlike clay, the soil will absorb water fairly quickly. So things like septic tanks the drain fields can be smaller and you have less area that you have withstanding water a lot. So what I want to do now is I'm going to come over to the tree line and pan around a little bit. So here's the north side. I'm going to try to get over to see if we can actually see the road. I can see the road there in the distance, so hopefully it can be seen on the video. But as you see, as I pan around, all of these trees, all this wooded area is ours. So we got a bunch of magnolias that you can see. We got a bunch of different types of hardwoods. We know we have maples, we have live oaks. We have a whole bunch of other type of trees. So I'm going to pan around again so you can see the rest of the property. There's the tower on the left side. There's the northwest or southwest corner. And then pan around again. You can see our neighbor's house and then the tree line this way. Now we're coming onto the north side of the property right before the tree line. And so now you can see the south side. And all the trees on the south side is not our property. It's the people that own the tower. The people that own the tower elected to buy the property outright instead of leasing it. Before that tower was there, all the trees that you see now was farmland. And only a little bit of the trees on the other side of the tower actually predated the tower itself. So those trees started growing in the mid-90s, and so you can see how tall those trees are. So that's how fast the pine trees grow. In South Carolina, if you have farmland and good drainage soil, if you let nature take its course, it will have pine trees in it, because pine trees grow faster than hardwood trees. So the pine trees do not like a lot of water. So when you get into more wet areas, then you will not have pine trees anymore, but you will have your hardwood trees. So at least in our area, if you look at a satellite map and see a bunch of deciduous trees, that means it's wetter. And if you see a bunch of pine trees, that means it's drier, just as a general rule. What I'm doing now is I'm stopping, and so you can see some of the stakes. Andrea's mother has a park model trailer, and it is less than 400 square feet. So it's going to go in this kind of location. Then the drain field, DHEC gets the final word on it, but we would like the drain field to go into this location. Given that the soil drains so well, we don't see a problem. The septic tank, we got it staked out right here. And then the house that we want to get is going to be over here. And because the building prices are so high right now, we are going to see about getting a double wide trailer instead of a stick built, because it's about half the cost. So even though we're in architecture as a profession, our dream is to design a house, but it would take us several more years of saving up in order to be able to get a stick-built house where we could get a manufactured house and be out here fairly quickly. One last thing I wanted to show is Andrea is standing up right now. So that just tells you the magnitude of how tall these trees are. So these trees are probably at least 75 feet tall. So when I say we have mature trees, we have mature trees.